Before the presentations, word around the table suggested it would really only be a contest between Steve Linnane and Lakes prop Paul Tideman. The night started well for the Bulldog halfback, collecting the Players' Player Award. No sooner had he sat down and he was called back. When it came to the 2HD Player of the Year, you couldn't get money on Linnane, and when his name was read out, the Curry fans cheered the house down. Once the finals are over, he can take his 13-night cruise and hang an enormous action photo for prosperity.
Curry are a very traditional club and team, and they strive to win as hard a team as I've ever played with.
Overall, it was a pretty good night for Curry. Phil Williams was the highest point scorer for the year with 202 points, and Brian Quinton racked up the most tries, recording 29 for the season. However, the prestigious club championship went to Wes. But the comment of the night has to go to one league fan. These awards don't mean anything unless you win a premiership. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
According to Harrison and Zollner, 1 in 3 students at the age of 7 have developed a visual processing problem when it comes to reading. That means when they read, they're only comprehending the first and last letters of the word, leaving the rest to guesswork. This condition can lead to the child not being able to understand whole sentences, and by the time they leave primary school, they have developed a serious literacy problem.
Means that our current methods of teaching, which heavily rely on whole word processing, in fact contain a fatal flaw.
Dr. Byron Harrison and a team of more than 50 advisors have spent the last 2 years researching what they call the visual attention span.
We're teaching whole word guessing capacity too early.
And they believe schools should be altering the way they teach.
Teachers merely have to shift their emphasis out of whole word guessing techniques and into sounding techniques.
The group is now in Newcastle holding workshops for hunter teachers, showing them how to detect reading deficiencies and a number of new teaching methods.
The 22-year-old homosexual from Newcastle was a member of the NIB Health Fund for nearly a year. This month he wanted to change his policy from single to family, claiming his live-in lover or de facto spouse made him part of a family. The claim was knocked back.
My partner and I have been together now for more than 14 months, a committed relationship, and I can't see why they can't accept us as a family.
NIB says it is simply following the guidelines under the National Health Act for a family policy, stating a homosexual relationship does not constitute a family. In a written response, NIB relayed the rules. A de facto spouse is defined as a person who is living with another person of the opposite sex on a bona fide domestic basis. In a statement, NIB said it won't be changing its stance until the government changes the Health Act. However, the company is prepared to insure the pair, but not under a family policy. There is no real cost disadvantage in 2 single policies versus family cover for 2. The Anti-Discrimination Board agrees NIB hasn't broken any laws, but Conciliation Officer Kay Jackson says it's a tough call, as other health funds will take homosexual couples in family policies.
Well, he is being discriminated against, but unfortunately that type of discrimination at this stage isn't unlawful.
So I thought things had changed, but obviously they haven't. They're still, they're still got to change.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The taxi industry is one of the most competitive areas of the service sector. To improve services to customers, Newcastle's Taxi Co-op spent $1 million upgrading to a computer dispatch system for its bookings. While computer screens have replaced radios in cabs, Lindsay Norton from Taxi Services says bookings by mobile phones have created a new problem for the industry.
It certainly is a very emotive issue, and in the cooperative here in Newcastle we have two major factions, those that are very much opposed to the use of mobile phones for taxi business, and on the other hand those who think that it's their right and are strongly in favour of using it.
Two taxi companies have asked the Trade Practices Commission to review the setting up of mobile phone groups. One is believed to have links to some Newcastle operators.
The Trade Practices Act and its implications come into play, along with passenger transport regulations which impose some fairly severe performance standards upon taxi cooperatives. So yes, it is a very complex issue, and it's one that's not going to be solved overnight.
Newcastle cab drivers will discuss the issue at their Co-op annual general meeting next month.
A 22-year-old woman with gunshot wounds to the right side of her chest and right arm and a 55-year-old man with multiple stab wounds to the stomach were under police guard awaiting questioning in Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital today. A violent argument in an East End flat boiled over just before 7 last night. Neighbours reported seeing a man being stabbed.
You could see just the back of his head and the knife continually moving up and down.
Police say the woman refused to allow ambulance officers into the flat to treat the man.
A female was in the room with a large carving knife, threatening to stab him further and keeping police at bay.
Negotiators were called in, along with a special operations group and detectives.
The argument escalated with the victim struggling with the female, and obviously the police reacted in affirmative action.
Were police themselves threatened?
No.
3 investigations have been launched. The Major Crime Squad from Newcastle and Police Internal Affairs from Sydney will look into the shooting. Inquiries will also be conducted to the stabbing. Meanwhile, the police officer who pulled the trigger has been commended.
I think the officer acted properly, and he certainly had a good appraisal of the situation, and no doubt he feared that this person's life was at stake.
At a bedside court hearing at the John Hunter Hospital this afternoon, Lake Macquarie woman Jennifer Lee Watts, now listed in a satisfactory condition, was charged with the attempted murder of Bevan Ross Payne and remanded in custody. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. their more than 20 games at the Glass House, the Falcons had only won one. That is until today. The Giants and the Falcons both badly needed victory to remain in playoff contention. The Falcons were down at quarter time, the Giants ahead 33-22, but fortunes were changing by half time, Newcastle overtaking the home side. The match wore on with some desperation play, but the Giants just couldn't turn the table on the Falcons, determined not to come home empty-handed from their road trip. Terry Dozier top scored for Newcastle with 24, Michael Johnson shot 20 and Everett Stevens 17. Final score 94-79 and a winning smile from Dozier.
Woods was back in Newcastle today for the hearing. The front row forward played for the Knights in 1991 with a $30,000 sign-on fee. The court heard that in a meeting in May of that year with coach Alan McMahon and chief executive Mike Armstrong, Woods was given verbal verification that he would be with the club the following year. Mike Armstrong didn't dispute he'd made an offer to Woods for the 92 season, admitting he'd stated, "We will get a contract done up and signed." But Mike Armstrong told the court today he stipulated that any contract had to be okayed by the board. Woods told the court he thought he was signed, sealed and delivered, but under cross-examination admitted he hadn't signed any papers before being dumped by the club. Counsel for the Knights, Paul Brereton, said it was not a contract until the signature was on paper. Woods is seeking $37,000 damages for loss of contract for the last 2 years he has played in Canberra. Magistrate Wakely has reserved his decision and adjourned the court till September 2nd. Peter Iron, NBN News.
Metres left to go. Cogitate and Street Ruffian on the outside coming home well. Leyden Hall being tackled by Street Ruffian. Street Ruffian almost level. Street Ruffian has gone home the better to score. Street Ruffian from Leyden Hall.
20-1 Street Ruffian, 12-1 and 9-4 in favourite. At Canterbury, the 7th was the Makita Legacy President's handicap over 1,550 metres.
Drawn level with neat action and in fact takes the lead, and they've got it between them with Musashi, hard ridden by Cooksley, drawing away in the last bit and is going to win easily. Musashi comes right away and put 3 lengths on neat action and a half neck away third Irish.
11-4 in favourite, 9-2 and 4-1.
It has to be one of the more unusual sports, a Jaffa Stuffathon. At Charlestown Square, Bray Deneen, champion surfer Mark Richards and Knights prop Mark Sargent were in lolly heaven. The idea is to stuff as many of the 150 kilos of Jaffas down your trousers in a 2-minute rush, all for a good cause, raising awareness for Red Nose Day tomorrow. Ray was doing a perfect impersonation of the Michelin Man, but it was basketballer Grant Kruger who took the trophy at the weigh-in, picking up 25 kilos of the chocolate treats.
Are you one of those people that likes Jaffas? I don't mind Jaffas, but I don't know about now. I think that might have put me off them a bit.
Ray came in a strong second with 22 kilos.
Usually in the old days it was a case of rolling them down the aisle of the pictures, but this is the first time I have to stuff them down my pants, and it's a completely different experience, I'll tell you.
Can you believe it? Last year, keen supporters actually ate some of the Jaffas after the competition. This year, they were cleaned up and disposed of at the tip. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
2 days ago, James Mullen Development announced plans for the former Gordon Pacific land at Kays Beach. Instead of a world-class resort, they want to set up a community called Pinny Beach. But that idea has angered many residents. Developer Greg Moylan came under constant attack from residents, concerned that the development of 4,000 housing blocks will destroy their quiet neighbourhood and that Caves Beach Road will become a main thoroughfare. Mr. Moylan tried to answer most questions, but at times he was interrupted by a sceptical audience. Also included in the proposal is a golf course, a 4-star motel and a marina. The first development application for 47 housing lots will go to council within weeks.
Thanks very much for coming. Okay, no problem.
"500 people packed the Singleton Civic Centre last night for the presentation dinner, traditionally washing down the feast with last year's trophy winners. Maintaining the rage over the tax hike in the budget, Hunter Vigneron spokesman Bruce Tyrrell told the gathering it would stifle further investment and lead to job losses, and he flagged today's launch of a $1 million fighting fund to influence Canberra to remove the extra impost. A record 768 wines were entered by 64 exhibitors throughout northern New South Wales, assessed by a panel headed by former Lindeman's executive and now wine consultant Carl Stockhausen. The judges were quite harsh when it was warranted too. They refused to grant a trophy in the sparkling class and even disqualified 2 wines that displayed excessive sugar. But the honours for the best dry red of the show went to Bloodwood Estate from Orange in the west, grower Stephen Doyle combining with John Reynolds in the Upper Hunter for a 1992 Cabernet Sauvignon. Lindeman's trotted out a show favourite to take the best dry white with its freak Hunter Semillon from 1970.
Although it may be the least of some motorists' concerns, an obscured number plate is a traffic offence.
It carries a penalty of $56. It doesn't carry points, so the driver doesn't lose points.
This month, Newcastle Highway Patrol officers were on full alert. 66 fines have been issued, 2 for missing number plates, 4 cautions were given.
Predominantly fittings to the back of the vehicle, such as tow bars, bike racks. Also, the number plates themselves can be obliterated through wear and tear and be fairly mutilated.
With the introduction of red light cameras at accident black spots and the increased use of speed cameras, police say easily identifiable number plates not only help to locate repeat offenders.
Such things as stolen vehicle checks and ordinary registration checks, complaints from other motorists where we haven't got a full number plate to go on.
And the crackdown is set to continue. Newcastle Police plan to stay on the lookout during next month.
All I can say to motorists is be wary, check your car over, check the rear, check the front and make sure those plates are clear and legible.
Melinda Smith, NBN News. The government has just set up a quality assurance committee overseeing
28-year-old Cathy Ann McCulloch lives in a silent world. She's profoundly deaf, a condition caused because her mother had German measles while she was pregnant with her.
I think once that initial shock was over, it was just get on with the job.
Because Cathy can't hear sound, she finds it difficult to speak. Using an ordinary telephone is impossible. However, the telephone typewriter, or TTY, provides a good substitute. A message can be typed and received on a screen. The only obstacle, there are so few of these special phones in use. To overcome the problem, Lifeline is acting as a middleman. Cathy Ann can ring Lifeline on her TTY, ask the operator to make a call for her on an ordinary telephone and wait for a reply from Lifeline on the TTY. Lifeline says no call is too trivial. The organisation will even order a pizza.
For doctors, or if she got sick, for an ambulance or whatever, just to ring up a taxi. It's just a marvellous thing that because Lifeline have got one now, she can virtually ring anyone.
Cathy Ann says the service has given her more independence and privacy. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
A very relieved chairman this afternoon declared the breakers were back in business.
The ASF asked us to meet to make sure that we're a viable proposition to be in NSL rather than start a season and halfway through the season fall over. So they've shown confidence in us today of full steam ahead for the breakers.
The determination of the breakers to once again take control of their future impressed the ASF. Buying back the catering rights and promoting the licensed club to ensure a consistent cash flow are key elements. The new management is also rapidly addressing its creditors.
When I first started here about 4 weeks ago, I think we had about 4.5 pages, A4 pages of creditors. We've now whittled that down to something less than a page. I won't go into the dollar side of it, but we've formulated a repayment policy and we're asking our creditors to be patient with us.
The clubhouse is the key for the revitalisation. New promotions with poker machines and quality entertainment are already being planned. The team will also have new away game colours, which will have them looking pretty smart. The whites will only be used, though, to make a clear distinction between similar coloured outfits.
More than 100 people looked on as the 43 Navy cadets from TS Vendetta marched onto their grounds at Coffs Harbour. The cadets were on their best behaviour as Commander David Cunningham assessed the unit. He also presented a letter from a Navy Admiral to the TS Vendetta Commanding Officer Lieutenant Frank King.
The Support Command has been exceedingly pleased with the work that's been done in Coffs Harbour. And I'd just like to take a few more minutes of your time and I'll read to you the commendation which has been signed by the Admiral. Lieutenant Francis George King, Naval Reserve Cadets, is commended for his exemplary dedication in the training of Naval Reserve Cadets, in particular at TS Vendetta.
Chair.
Yep.
There we go.
Thanks a lot. What's your name?
Police say Margaret Davis from Green Hill near Kempsey was stabbed with a knife during an argument in Lionel Rose Street, Green Hill, shortly before 6 last night.
The detectives from Kempsey and scientific police from Grafton have come down and investigated, and at about 2 o'clock this morning a 23-year-old man surrendered himself to the Kempsey police station. He has since been interviewed and charged with murder.
Hunter Catholic schools were well up there in the finals, with 2 acts from the Maitland area competing in the state open section. Newcastle's Francis Xavier College finished in 2nd place in the Premier category held on Friday night, with this piece, Random Talks, an attack on technology for technology's sake.
They're really giving Sydney a run for their money, showing what we're made of up here.
But the winner of the National Award won't be announced until October. Judges will view videotaped performances before casting their final votes.
Every year, Newcastle people produce around a tonne of rubbish per head. This totals about 150,000 tonnes, placing a huge demand on landfill space. But Council plans to solve the problem by halving the amount of waste now discarded at the dump by the year 2000.
It's a pretty strong challenge, but it's an achievable one. And we have to just look at a range of strategies that are going to enable us to do that.
Strategies include a weekly household recycling service, collecting additional items like milk cartons and plastic bottles, newspaper and cardboard. Even the humble worm will be taking part.
We'll be making worm farms available to householders, which will enable them to put all their food scraps and yard waste into that and keep it out of the waste stream.
In Newcastle, household rubbish accounts for only 30% of the total waste stream. Just over 40% comes from the commercial sector, which will be heavily targeted throughout the campaign.
The commercial part of the waste stream is largely paper and cardboard from packaging, plastics and the like. Also in the construction area there's a lot of timber and masonry waste that can all be diverted.
The campaign will be launched at a special public seminar at City Hall on Thursday night. "91-year-old Violet of Newcastle welcomes her daily telephone call. Each morning a volunteer checks with her just to make sure she's all right.
It's for elderly people who live alone, who possibly are medically at risk and need that security call of the morning, just in case something should happen to them through the evening in their own home.
Last month, the Sydney suburb of Annandale was shocked with the discovery of the body of a 70-year-old woman who'd been dead in her home for 3 years. A tragic case that could happen anywhere.
For instance, we had a lady that was in the bath all night. She didn't answer her phone in the morning. She had been trapped in the bath. Well, when the phone didn't ring in the morning, we had immediately we sent somebody around and she was placed in hospital.
The scheme known as Telecross has been operating in the Hunter for nearly a decade. The Red Cross has just expanded the service to Taree and Port Macquarie and wants volunteers.
I think it's very caring, really, for older folk, you know. It's nice to have somebody to talk to when you got nobody.
On Monday next is a comedy about the rehearsal of a play.
It's a play within a play. It's a rehearsal, and during the rehearsal, of course, the author arrives.
And what follows is an interesting insight into what goes on behind the scenes of a professional repertory company under pressure.
Members of the cast are not aware that there's an audience there. The only one that knows there's an audience is the director, so of course he keeps talking back and forth to the audience. But of course, to all intents and purposes, the play goes on as a rehearsal.
So how has the rehearsal of a rehearsal reflected real life?
Myself as the director, of course, out there, you know, there are lines that I might think, no, I'll cut that out or change around things. It's really what the author and the director are doing within the play. Now, it's very true to life.